Daniel Smith Watercolors set. If you guys remember before, I did have a couple of colors from them, and I was really impressed by those, so I thought it'd be a good idea to start a whole set. And before we start, I want to give full credit to Sir Alan, who chose all of these colors for me. I also got these colors from him. If you are in the Philippine watercolor space, you would know him. He is sort of the person to go to if you have any watercolor questions, and he also has his own channel, so I will be linking it in the description. The packaging is very simple. He just gave me this little tin thing, which is really just what I needed. The half pens are all magnetic, so they are secured in that tin. And it's insignificant, but I really love that I was still able to get this unpacking experience that you usually get when you're buying half pens that are just these half pens and not hand poured. So I really like that. He also individually labeled the half pens, so it's easy to keep track of them. So we're gonna move on to the swatches. All of these, except maybe a couple, were all from the suggestion of Sir Alan. So these are all colors that you would see from sort of like a beginner set from a brand. So the first one is salmon yellow, which I think is a color that you would expect the most. I think it's the most versatile yellow, and that's why it's so present in people's palettes. Next one I have is New Gamboge. This again was from the suggestion of Sir Alan. I've never tried New Gamboge before, but it is very similar to a lot of my warmer yellows in my sets. The next one I have is actually different from what he suggested. He initially listed light ochre in the palette, but out of all of my watercolor sets, I don't really remember myself using light ochre that much, and so I just went ahead with something very intense. This is Aussie Red Gold, and I just really like this almost rusty yellow. I don't think I have a color that's very similar to it before, so I just went ahead with this one instead of the light ochre. The next one I have is Pyrrole Scarlet, and this again was from his suggestion. I love this one. I've always been drawn to warmer, intense reds, and so I just really love this one. The next one that he suggested was actually Quinacridone Rose, and since that again is a color that I wasn't so sure of, I was more used to having carmine in my sets, and so I just went ahead and got the carmine instead of the one that he suggested. Next, we move on to our blues, and the one thing that I told Sir Alan was that I'm not so used to using colors that are granulating, and he did warn me that ultramarine was going to be a granulating color, but it's fine because I'm not really used to using blues anyway. And also I sort of just expected ultramarine to be granulating, but it was just so nice for him to tell me that in advance just so I would know. The next one is a phthalo blue, which I wasn't gonna ask. I was actually gonna ask for one blue in the set just because I'm not so picky with my blues, but I'm so happy that I just went ahead and got this blue just because it's very cool and it's so different from the ultramarine, and also because for this painting it became the hero, and I'll talk more about that later. But then the next one that I have is Payne's Gray, which is just something that I would use instead of blacks in my set, which is also another color that I'm used to in my palette, so I would have to have a Payne's Gray. The next colors that we have are our greens, and the first one is Sap Green, which I love, by the way. It's different from a basic green that I would expect from a beginner set, so I'm actually really happy with the Sap Green. The next one is Deep Green, which I don't think that he actually suggested. I just got this one because I felt like I needed a very deep, dark green. And then the last ones are our earth tones, which I don't really use that much, but I did go for the EHF Brown Iron Oxide. I think he suggested something else for this one. I think it may have been Burnt Umber, but I wanted a more neutral brown that is a little bit darker. And then the last one in this set is Burnt Sienna, which is something I find myself always using, so it's very useful. And then the next two are just the colors that I had before. The first one is Moon Glow, which is this gorgeous, very granulating color. It has a lot of different undertones to it, and it spreads out into different textures every time. So it's such a beautiful, different color. And then the next one is also similar to Moon Glow. It's Cascade Green, and it has these different blue and yellow undertones to it when it's watered down. So I had those two before, and then I just added them onto my set. I really wanted to finally get these watercolors because I feel like a lot of people have them for their favorite watercolors. And so I also think that from looking at reviews, they're very different from the watercolors that I would normally go for, that are more predictable and easier to work with, I would say. So I've been really excited to try these, and I just went ahead and bit the bullet and got them. I want to get my review done right up front just because I am so excited about how this painting went, and I want to talk just about that later. I really love these colors. They were vibrant and intense, but also I was able to get very thin, transparent layers with them, which I didn't expect. I am so impressed by the granulating colors that I was fully expecting to not like the basic colors as much, just because there is no way that they could have lived up to the two colors, the Moon Glow and the Cascade Green. And while those two colors are still a standout, I was still very impressed with this basic set, and I think it's already my favorite watercolors. I would have to use my Sennelier once again, but I think now if I would give myself just one set to work with for the rest of my life, it would be this Daniel Smith set. I think it might still be premature to say that, but that is how I feel at the moment. I'll update you guys if I change my mind, but yeah, I love these watercolors, and I fully recommend them for anyone who's working with watercolors, even to people who are more used to more predictable watercolors. I would get these just to try it out, maybe get 3 or 4 colors that you'll need. Try and see if you can work with them. But yeah, I was really impressed by these, and they would be my first recommendation now for watercolors. I do think they're a bit pricier, just when you think about it, but because I got them in hand-poured half pans, it doesn't really sway me as much. And also because watercolors, they're not like other mediums. These half pans I know will last me for years and years if I just take care of them. So I honestly would still recommend them, even if they're a little bit more on the expensive side if you live outside of the US. These colors are just great, and they will be my #1 recommendation now. So onto this painting. This reference photo I actually had saved before, but it's something that I didn't know how to approach. If I had done this before I bought my Daniel Smith watercolors, I don't think I would have painted it at all, just because it's a mix of very delicate but also very punchy colors, so I wouldn't know how to approach that with my Sennelier watercolors or the other watercolors that I have, which I think behave very similarly to Sennelier. So just because I was so excited for this, I just went ahead and used my new colors for this painting. I wasn't so optimistic with it just because this is a reference photo that I didn't know how to approach. There's very different elements to the lighting and the colors, which I didn't really know how to start, but because of how much I enjoy this painting, I didn't even think about achieving those. Because of how much I enjoy these watercolors, I didn't even think about achieving them. I was just really excited to use them that I eventually got to the exact look that I wanted, which I'm so happy about. The kind of look that I wanted is this sort of old photo look. I wanted it to look like an old photograph, not only because of the colors, but I just wanted it to have this old feel to it. And that kind of look was going to be hard to achieve with my Sennelier, just because when I think of the paintings that I can get with Sennelier watercolors, the paintings that I have in mind are very clean, very vibrant, and sort of light in the colors and also in the values. When I work with that watercolor, I always see myself having to add so many layers to my painting. And that's a good thing because you see those different layers as different elements to paintings, and it does have this look that is beautiful in its own way. What I love about the Daniel Smith watercolors is that they're so punchy that in most of these cases, I didn't really feel like I needed to layer more on top. In the background, there were a couple of times where I glazed more on top, but it was sort of less of a value thing, but more I just wanted to see different colors on top of each other. So I knew right away that I was going to get that background done with these colors just because it's very dark and it's very punchy. So those were the words that I would use to describe Daniel Smith watercolors anyway. What I was really surprised about was how well these same watercolors worked for the main subject for her, just because in contrast to the background, for her, I used very delicate layers, also very delicate colors on top of each other. Actually, there's more parts to her that aren't painted and just remained white compared to my other paintings, which usually I would want my paintings to be super saturated with different layers on top of each other. For this one, I didn't actually paint her as much, and that works really well because these colors are so vibrant that I wasn't really pushed to add more on top. I felt like I just needed to add what I wanted to add. I wasn't tempted to add more because I was already there values wise. By the way, for this one, I used my Princeton brushes, which they sent me for a workshop that I will be doing sometime in the middle of this year for Strathmore, and I will update you guys more when that's done, but I'm so excited. These brushes are beautiful, especially the Kolinsky brush, which I know you guys have been recommending to me. I just haven't tried it because it's so expensive. But now that it was sent to me, you guys are right. It's definitely one of the best brushes I've ever used. The color palette for this painting are actually mostly warm, that you can see overall after the painting is done, but to balance it all out, I actually use a lot of cooler colors to bring those warmer colors back. And overall for this painting, what I really just did was take the color palette straight off of the reference photo. I think the one that is a little bit different is the phthalo blue. And initially I was really scared that it would throw off the rest of the piece, it being such a cool blue amidst all of those very warm oranges and yellows. But it actually became the color that really tied everything together. I feel like if I had used the ultramarine or even the Payne's gray for the cooler colors for this piece, it wouldn't have the same effect. I really just used the phthalo blue to replace the cooler grays in the photo, and initially I was scared of that choice, but I'm so happy with how the painting turned out. It was just so cool to actually enjoy the process and also end up with a finished piece that was exactly as I intended before I started. So yeah, it was a very exciting process overall. By the way, if you guys want to see this full walkthrough, it's up on my Patreon. The whole painting process only took me about an hour and a half to fully do. That is excluding the drying time, but it's one of the paintings that took me the shortest times to do, and it's, I think, one of the easier ones to replicate. So really excited for my patrons to do that if they do try. And yeah, if you guys want to see that video, it's up on my channel too. What I really, really love about this piece is actually in the background, the textures that I got from mixing my Cascade Green and my Moon Glow, and then watering those two down just so I can glaze the background, was just so perfect. It turned out exactly as I wanted, and it also just gave me this very textured, grainy feel that you would expect to see in old photographs. And it also had the same effect when I used different colors for her dress, and it was just so exciting to have everything work together like that. And to finish the painting off, it's having such a divide between the dark and textured background versus the main subject being light and delicate. I just felt like it needed to have these white details to pull everything together. And so for most of it, I'm using white gouache, but for the smallest details, I really, once again, came back to my Copic Opaque White to finish everything off. And yeah, that is it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed this review and this painting demo. Once again, if you want to see the full walkthrough, it's up on my Patreon, and the link to it will be in the description. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you to my patrons for always supporting me. I think you guys are the absolute best, and I'll be seeing you guys again soon.